All right. Well, I did not intend to be gone for 6 hours, but we're back. Oops. This is not going to bode well for finishing this. I'm really glad I went with a simpler project. But I realized that I was way too tired to be doing anything intelligent, so I had to go take a nap for a bit. I'm feeling much better now and ready to kick this off right. So we're going to get back into it with the player controller. Where I left off was this shambles code trying to have the jumping moved over to a separate state machine. Now I've got that mostly switched over. I'm not in love with the way I have this working, but I'm going to be honest, this is not the most important thing I need to be worried about right now. But suffice it to say, the logic for the state machine where we left it should be, or the stuff that was being accessed directly on the actor has been moved out to its own component, which is now instantiating the state machine and adding the states to it. But I've only completed the one state out of 4, so I need to go swap the others over using the same pattern. So let me see. I should have those pasted over here. Yeah, okay. I see I've also got jump velocity, jump crest, jump state machine. Do I have jump velocity? I do. Okay, so I can move that out. I don't need either of those either. And I don't need the pushable component for this jam at all. Shouldn't need that. Although actually in here I do. So I need to do state machine dot change state, and we'll set the ready to jump state. There we go. So that should be good. Yeah, so this is a somewhat important bit, is that jump press needs to go to false every frame. The way, and this is one of the things I don't like about this code, is that you have to pull the jump button and it has to be reset to false every frame after you check it. Although I'm realizing now I was doing that in process and I was doing everything else in physics process. I don't think there was a reason for that. Okay, well, we'll circle back to that. First things first, let's get the falling state added. So we will come over here to the jump component. We're going to make a new script. Let me see. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't think you can create subclasses, or you can't inherit from a subclass through that menu. Did not know that. Yeah, more things you know. We'll just call that falling state, and we'll update it in here. We'll just copy the stuff from the ready to jump state. The good news is that most of this should be the bulk of the code that I really need to worry about. I really don't think there's a lot else going on. Okay, so we set the gravity multiplier equal to whatever the falling gravity multiplier is. All right, so I'm gonna move this up here, and we're going to comment that out for the moment. And then, okay, so I need, this doesn't exist in this state, and we're doing landing state. And that looks like that was it for this one. So all I have to do is adjust these. So jump velocity 0, that's already being handled. Acceleration multiplier, I think I did put these on the component. Yeah, so we do have falling and all that. Okay, so I should be able to just change these to jump component dot. I'm really not a fan of how coupled the states are to this jump component. They've got a pretty gross relationship in how this works, and I'm not a huge fan of that. But with I don't want to get bogged down in the minutia of the jump state machine, even though jumping is a major part of the game. As long as it works, it's good enough. I've got to really, with jams, you always have less time than you think you have. So as bad as this may be architecturally, I know this is the only place in this code base where I'm going to be doing this because I don't have a reason for anything else to be jumping. So it's fine for now. But this is, again, not a good practice to do it specifically this way. Now I'm going to go ahead and update the other states. So I need a jump start state. And it looks like the complicated one's going to be the landing state. Okay, so we will do this again. And I'm just going to duplicate the falling state. And we're going to call this a jump start state. That is not how you spell start. All right, so like this has 1.0 in air movement, in air acceleration. Okay, and then this is kind of the weird one. I'm assuming I have jump speed on that. I'll check it in a moment. And this just immediately transitions to the falling state. So we'll just comment that out. Yeah, this is much cleaner than what I was doing before, though. Oh, actually, I did need that. Yeah, I will say the code's much cleaner, but it's not very modular right now. Yes, okay, I do have jump speed there. So then I just have this last one to move, and then I can create an instance of the state machine here and figure out where the jump velocity needs to get calculated. Now, something did occur to me while I was on break, and that is how I'm going to handle bouncing. I don't know if I'm going to make that a separate component that gets factored into the player movement speed, or if I'm going to have bouncing. Well, I guess bouncing wouldn't invoke a jump, because a jump, the whole point of a bounce is that it would need to be higher than a jump. I hadn't really thought of that. I'm also not sure how I want to handle jump, like bouncing. If I want bouncing to be something where like you have to jump to initiate a bounce, because if I do that, then I'm going to have to figure out a way to detect if the player is falling whenever they hit the bounce pad, which is either going to be going through the jump state machine and tying those things together, or I'm going to have the bounce pad detect the velocity of the thing coming in. That might be the easier way to go about it. Anyways, let's go ahead and we're going to duplicate this, and this is the landing state. Now, realistically, I would probably, in a larger project, name these better, like jump land or something, because you could conceivably have other things that need to land. But for now, this should be fine. Again, it's just a jam. Okay, so all those go to 1, that goes to 0, that's fine. Okay, so yeah, here's where I need these timers. So I'm going to put those there and comment them out for a moment. Because the nice thing about these being nodes is that you can actually attach them. And I've also got some internal state, it looks like. All right. Okay, let me move this a little further down. I keep getting confused. And I have an exit. Okay, that's the first time I've had one on one of these states. The whole reason I'm copying this, by the way, the jumping has caused a lot of problems in past jams and projects. One of the issues I had was like a double bounce thing where you could jump, but then if you jumped again while you were landing, you would bounce higher, and you could just keep doing that indefinitely. If you've ever played Sly 3, it was like Murray's ball form where you could bounce, which is kind of cool, but it wasn't intentional, and it would escalate until you were going thousands of meters a second. And it took me a long time to figure out what exactly was wrong with the state machine that was causing that. And I think this state was the main one that was the culprit. So this one especially is pretty important that I copy it over as best as I can. Okay, so the cooldown. Normally, I don't like to have state up here. I usually like to, in a state machine, I usually have a blackboard that the state writes to, and all of its state is maintained there, which makes it a lot easier for debugging because you can just print the contents of the blackboard, which is basically just like a dictionary. And then it also makes it easy to reset it. But in this case, I think it's easier to just do it like this. But one thing I will do is I'm going to reset this to false in the enter, just in case. I don't know, just for safety, because I've got a feeling it might go wrong if I don't. Okay, and then I'm going to need this. I'll probably just copy this one as is. So we'll just set cooldown to true, and that's going to be hooked into the timer. Okay, let me get rid of that. Okay, so let's see. This would be jump component dot is grounded if cooled down and not jump machine dot. One thing I don't like is jumping here for the variable name, because it's not really testing if you're jumping, it's testing if a jump has been requested. But yeah, not a huge fan of that. Okay, so these should be fine. Okay, yeah, let me get rid of that just so I remember what I've already updated. Okay, and let me comment those out. It's always kind of dicey when you're copying code between jams like this. This should be the last of it I need. I can't think of anything else I would possibly want from old jams. It's going to be totally custom stuff from here on out. Just movement code is always iffy, but it's always dicey whenever you start copying stuff from one jam to another, because you end up forgetting why you did things a certain way. Okay, so this is just a timer. So I'm going to need that. Set that to null, and I'm just going to do this in the ready because this is a node. I can do that. Actually, I'm going to do this in enter tree. And we're going to do that equals timer dot new. Oh, what did I do there? Actually, is this one of the weird ones that has create instance? No. Okay. We're going to add child the timer, and I can't remember, is front at the top? Yeah, okay. I probably should have done that with the other ones too. This is a nice feature. You can, I feel like people overlook this, but whenever you call add child, you can mark a node as internal, and it won't get returned by default by get children if you do that. So it's very useful if you're trying to distinguish between internal workings of a reusable component and things that you've added under the component in the scene tree. So just a good tip there. Okay, so now this, I can just do that dot timeout connect. All right, I'm gonna actually do that up here. Okay, and I'm not gonna worry about disconnecting it at all. And this needs to come from the jump component. Yeah, okay. Just making sure I had that. Starts the timer or resets it. Yep, that's what I want. And that's why, okay, so down here, I'm not going to disconnect it. The reason I had to do that is originally this was a ref counted state that was directly accessing details of the actor it was attached to. So I had to detach that, or else the state would get a signal potentially. So that here, all I have to do is just stop the timer so that it doesn't trigger this, which I guess it wouldn't really matter, because if it triggered it, all it would do is reset this variable. But I don't want this state doing anything when it's not active, so we'll do that. And I believe that was everything for this one. Oh no, I do need to change these. So falling state, we'll just do that, and then we'll do ready to jump state. And we'll just bring that up there, duplicate that, and do it again. Okay, yeah, this is so much cleaner. I really like this. Make sure everything's getting set properly. Looks like it is. All right, so now player no longer has that in there. Now let me look at the jump component. The state machine, one thing that occurred to me, I do need to do is physics process equals false. So that's my variable to indicate that the state machine, oh wait, no, not false, true. That's my toggle to swap it between the process method and the physics process for the execute. So we're good there. And then I did say I wanted to make these internal. And now I also need to add the other states into here. Now this could get a little bit dicey because the states have to reference each other, which is that whole cyclic dependency issue. Again, not the best way to do this, but do as I say, not as I do. All right. So let me come back here real quick. So jump pressed, that's getting reset there. Physics process, I don't need to worry about updating the state machine because that's going to happen automatically. So I just need to worry about resetting the jump button. And where was jump velocity getting added? Oh, it's way down here. And then this was part of the pushing system. Okay, so I don't need that. I don't think there's much else different between this code and that code, other than a few differences on how I define some stuff now. So is on floor, gravity multiplier, delta. Yeah, all that looks the same. I mean, it should be. This code is kind of related. I've changed it over time, but it's not drastically different. Move speed multiplier, adjusted move speed. Is that a thing? Yeah. Okay. Oh, that, yeah, okay. That is one thing, is that I'm gonna have to read some of the variables for fetching adjusted speeds. Yeah, like acceleration. These were the variables that were being directly updated before, so I'm gonna have to read those directly now. No big deal. But yeah, it looks like all I was doing is right here. I was just adding jump velocity. So, okay, that is fine. And then all these other variables, I'm just gonna have to go through and check them. So, all right, I will go ahead and just delete all this so that this is compiling again. And I'm gonna go ahead and add a jump component. We'll put that up there, and now we're gonna attach some stuff. So we'll attach the player node. Player 95. Oh, okay, no, that's, let me clear this. There we go. Okay, we're looking good. I don't think there's any major issues there. All right, so now I want to do velocity. Oh, that's actually a good question. Is this using, is jump velocity an actual vector? It is. That's, why am I doing that? Why am I doing that? Why was I using jump velocity? None of these states do anything with that, right? Where's the actual jump start? Yeah, jump speed's a okay, yeah, that makes no sense to do it this way. I think originally I had planned for some sort of leap jump, but there's no point to doing it that way. Also, this is I thought I had made this mistake. Ah, dang it. Okay, that's gonna be mad at me for a second, but it'll be fine. I'm gonna quickly just change this to a float. Okay, that's falling state, jump start state. Yep, that's good. Landing state, this one's gonna need to be updated. Also checking the class names as I go. Yep. Ready to jump. This also needs to be 0.0. Yep, okay, looks fine. Everything else is good. I probably should have a variable for these, like default gravity multiplier, default speed, and all that. That would definitely be the smarter way of going about this. I'm going to be honest, this whole thing is probably overkill to be using this kind of state machine. The jump component itself could probably be using an internal state machine that's just like a case switch. But I have a feeling I'm going to need the state machine class or something else later, so I'm just going to roll with it for now. But I will say I think this was probably overkill to do it using nodes in this particular instance, since all it's doing is updating variables and a tiny bit of logic. Okay, so we've got that set to a float. So now in player, I can now do, and I can add my jump component, which I need a unique name, and I'm gonna grab that and put that over here. You know, something I really wish Godot did is when you drag something in and you hold control and you get these on-ready variables, I really wish by default it would make them private and put the underscore. I don't know if there's an editor setting for that, but it's really strange to me that it doesn't, because to me, virtually every time I do that, I would want it private. I can't really think of a time where I've ever not wanted it to be private. Okay, so we're adding the jump velocity. All right, now this, I need to do the same thing in a few other places. Move speed multiplier. Let me double check what all we've got. No, where's the, okay. So we have gravity multiplier, move acceleration multiplier. So these are the other two I need. Okay. Yeah, and that's now unused. Oh, you know what? I can just get rid of those. That'll make that easier. Okay, there we go. So now I can grab jump component dot gravity multiplier, and actually I'm just going to reference that one directly there. All right, and we'll do that. And I'm guessing, yeah, okay, acceleration multiplier is there. So jump component dot move acceleration multiplier. Okay. I think that should handle that. Well, it's definitely made the player script a lot smaller. Okay, so now back to the jump component. We're not done here. I need to add these other states. So I'm going to just create them all here because they're going to need to cross-reference each other whenever I set some stuff. So now we're going to do landing state. And I need a ready to jump state. And what was the last one? Oh, jump start. Oh wait, I have ready. Oh, falling is the one I was missing. So then I need jump start state. Hey, I spelled it right for once. There we go. Okay. So now I can actually start to set some of these properly. Airborne state. So I'm going to do these first. I should really be doing that before I add it. Airborne state, I think, was falling. Well, let me double check. Ready to jump. Why was I using is grounded? Yeah, okay, that's definitely falling. Okay. So now we'll do landing state dot jump component equals self. Falling state equals falling state. That's pretty easy. This would be easier to wire up if I was doing this, dragging them out. Okay, then it also has a ready to jump. Here's the cyclic dependencies. Already starting. Okay. Just copy this. The good news is this really is like most of the gameplay. It's just jumping. I'm going to need some sort of either interaction system or collision system to detect when you've actually grabbed a fruit. I'm not actually sure yet whether or not I want to make you grab them, or if it's going to be something where you can pick them. I think logistically it might make more sense to pick them, but we'll see. Okay, falling state, does this have anything else? It does not. Okay, so we're good there. All right, and then the last one is jump start. All right, what all do we have here? Oh, that also just has falling. Okay. Okay. So now we're almost done getting this wired up. That should be the state machine itself done. Now the problem is, let me clear this. I need to wire it up in player. So I am not currently querying the input to determine if you're jumping. So let me think, where does it make sense to do that? I'm tempted to have that done in process. No, that is where I was doing it in the other script, so that might be the best place to do this. So player input dot jumping, and we'll do jump component dot yeah, the only problem here is that you need to reset this every frame. I know I'm always unsure about what the process order of things is in Godot. Like, it does the parent process before the children, or is that even defined? So I don't think I want to rely on that. I think I'm actually... I'm gonna do this. Again, I'm mixing a lot of different paradigms here, but I don't love doing this, but I don't like having it as a variable that you set like one of these, because these are meant to be read, and realistically these should be getters. I did this kind of weird, but we'll just do it like this for now. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. So we'll do that, and then this is not resetting it on the player input, so this doesn't reset itself. I'm gonna try in process setting this to false, and we'll try keeping that this thing's responsibility to reset it. Okay. It's definitely messy, but what does this say? 26. Oh, no, okay. All right, so we're calling that. That's now a child of that. That's linked up to everything. All right. We'll see if it works. No, no, it did not. Invalid jump start state of type node on base object. What am I storing this as? Oh, jump state, not again. That's not a real field, is it? No, it is not. It's just called jump state. Ready to jump. Yeah, okay. Jump state. Yeah, sure. All right, there was bound to be at least one bug in there. Okay, well, right off the bat, I can see that part of the problem is that I'm not jumping when I press the button. That's not good. Alright, so something is not making it through the signals. Alright, we have a debugger message here. This might... Cannot transition to a state... Ah, dang it. What did I do wrong here? Let me double check this. Pushes an error message to Godot's built-in note. This function does not pause execution. What am I doing wrong with that? Does this not use formats? I thought this used format strings. Maybe it doesn't. Pushes an error message. I really wish the documentation gave an example of what the multiple arguments did, like this one. Actually, oh yeah, okay. I think it did. I think it okay, yeah. That does not do what I thought it did. Okay, so root main level player. Hold on. Okay, so node 3. Node 2 cannot transition to state. Okay, that is weird. It's trying to test if... Okay, well, that's not what I was expecting. First and foremost, let me fix that. So this should be using the format instead. All right, and let me rerun that to verify that that's working. Okay, what am I doing wrong here? This has been way too long since I've done any... This is what I get for taking a while off Godot. Okay. So let me search for the format string. Okay. Is there a format method? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's what I was expecting. So dot format, which I believe the percent is the shorthand for. Huh. Or, ooh, no, it's not, maybe. I'm gonna look this up really quick. Ah, it's %s. Dang it. I was thinking Java loggers. I thought that was suspiciously easy because the editor usually freaks out whenever I try to do this. Oh yeah, and I also get the format string. Yeah, okay. Not all arguments converted during. Yeah. There we go. That's what I was wanting to have happen. Okay, so now what is wrong with the state machine? Why is that happening? New state.getParent is equal to self. So this is saying that okay, so that's the state it was transitioning to, node at 3, not a child of node at 2. That does not make sense. Okay. Here's what we're going to do. We are going to check really quick when the remote debugger what's going on here. So jump component. What the heck? Okay, I'm guessing this must be the state. Yeah, okay, that's the state machine. Oh, there we can see our timer on the node. Oh, okay, yeah, I see what I've done wrong. Yeah, okay. I added them as children of the wrong thing. That absolutely makes sense why that's broken. This is the one reason why I don't like node-based state machines. They get kind of... I don't like the idea of a state that isn't a child of the machine running. And you could do some stuff where the machine tries to discover the states automatically, but I don't really like doing that. It just adds processing overhead. Okay, I pressed the jump button, and I can tell that I'm in jump mode. It might be hard to see on stream, but the movement is floaty, and I saw it move like 1 pixel up. Oh, okay, yeah, and I can fall. So I did jump, but I didn't jump very high. I think gravity's not running. Am I not calculating gravity in here? Yeah, gravity should be getting calculated. That gravity multiplier times delta. I am calling move and yeah, I am calling move and slide. I wouldn't be able to move if I wasn't. Huh. Okay, I'm gonna put a... What is the default gravity multiplier on this thing? Jump cooldown, continue jump. Falling gravity multiplier 1.2. Yeah, I was gonna say, it should make gravity stronger when you're in the air. Okay, let me try something. Let me make the jump speed like 40. Or actually, let me leave that alone, and let me just edit it over here. The whole reason of having these export variables. Okay, that does nothing. Okay. Let me change the falling gravity multiplier to like 10. I've got a feeling that I've assigned the wrong state somewhere, and I am landing. I suspect what's happening is I'm like instantaneously landing the moment I press jump, I think is what's happening. Let me see if I fall really fast. Oh, yep. Yep, so that is working. So I'm in the falling state, like, instantly. So something is not right about the way the jump is getting applied. What do you want to bet? I mean, at least I know the input is getting assigned, but for some reason, the jump is not calculating. I wonder if the jump velocity is ever actually changing. It should be in here, the jump speed. I wonder if that's getting reset way too fast for this thing to read. I've got a suspicion that what might be happening is that the state machine is running at a different... Maybe... I mean, it wouldn't be at a different rate, but I wonder if this is getting assigned And then before this value can be read, it's transitioning to the falling state that's resetting it. I think that's what's happening. So let me come into the falling state. Let me just try something. We're going to comment that out, and we're going to see what happens if I jump. Oh, nothing. Okay, then wasn't expecting that. Oh, you know what? Let me do it on the landing state as well, though. Oh, okay. Well, that's a new one. Huh. That's actually very interesting. I've not seen that particular issue before. Why would that be happening? So we have the states are fine. What would potentially change it like that? I still feel like it's got to be something's desynchronized here. Let me try something here. Let me try like plus 40. Just to see what'll happen. Just to make sure, you know what, actually let me do plus 4. Just to make sure I'm not crazy. So this should constant, yeah, okay. Yeah, so if you set that, it does increment. Let me do something. So if jump velocity is greater than 0.0, we're going to is it? There we go. I couldn't find the breakpoint button. Okay, let's do a breakpoint on that. So oh yeah, okay, I pressed jump and it's not triggering the breakpoint. Yeah, okay, so jump velocity is never getting set to 4 in here, which makes me think I know what's happening. Update velocity, is this being, okay, this is running in physics process. So my guess is that the state machine does not run. Okay, so let me think about this. So the state machine is a child of this, the jump component. The jump component and the state machine is running in the physics process, correct? Let me double check that. Yes, physics process true. I mean, actually, let me try that. Let me just switch it to false. I'm curious. Yeah, okay, that hit the breakpoint. Yeah. All right, that's what I thought. And we'll do a step over. Ah, dang it. All right, let me see if that fixed it. Yep, that fixed it. Oh, but I can't jump a second time now. So something didn't reset. Yeah, okay. I think what's happening is that physics process is maybe getting called after this one. And if that's the case, that would explain why that isn't working. Yeah, that's kind of the tricky thing with jump velocity, is that it's an impulse. So it has to be zeroed out in the next state, which means that if you're not reading it at the exact frame that it was set, after it was set, then it's not going to work. So my options there would be I could use a signal to maybe instantly notify this thing whenever it changes, but yeah. The problem I have with having physics process, with this thing run in process instead of physics process, is that there's potential desync issues if those two are ever set to run at different rates. And I don't think they are by default, but I still don't like that approach. I think the bigger issue now is why didn't it reset whenever I jumped? It should have gone back into the ready to jump state. But I don't think it did for some reason. That's kind of interesting. So let me see. What could I do? I think I'm going to print in here. Just do that. Do a little bit of print line debugging. Oh, interesting. I couldn't jump at all that time. What? Oh, there might be some other shenanigans going on here. Oh, yeah. Huh. Interesting. Okay, now that's not working anymore. It jumped once, so that may have been a frame rate thing. Oh, I really didn't want that to happen. Trying to debate what exactly, how do I fix that? I think what I need to do, let me come into here. We're gonna go ahead and do the thing that I've done before. We're gonna make this a, do that, and we're gonna say process, physics, process, then manual. And we're gonna make this a process mode equals oh, is process mode one of the reserved ones? Ah, I thought so. Okay. I'm gonna call this update mode. Nope. Update mode. Okay. Okay, so if update mode dot process equals not get property from enum value. What? Oh. Physics process. Okay. And then I'm going to make execute, or what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually add a func tick. And we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to say just for that way you can't accidentally tick it when it's in physics or process mode. Okay, there we go. So now the state machine can be manually ticked. And now what I'm going to do is come over here and change this to update mode equals state machine dot update mode dot manual. And we're going to add a func update. And we're going to let that be calculated in here. So I guess state machine does need to be oop. Okay, so there we go. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and assign this here. I like to keep those null up here just so that I can make sure that if I haven't assigned it properly with all this other stuff, it doesn't work. It'll error out and makes it easier to catch the errors. Okay, so now there's an update method on this. So now if I come over here in physics process, I can call that method whenever I want. Okay, and I think I'm gonna try calling it here. And well, that may still be a problem. Yeah, I think I'm gonna do this up here actually, just to be safe. Okay, let's see if that fixed my problem. There we go. Yep, sure enough, that fixed it. Yeah, that's much better. Okay. Yeah, and I can't just infinitely jump by holding space either. There's a slight delay when you land before you can jump again, which is the way I like it. Oh, that's much better. And make sure that jumping off the edge works. Yep. Okay, good. We fixed that. Well, that was a little more gruesome than I wanted it to be. But I'd say that's player movement and control done. So now I just need to work on the next part. I will say player input usually is one of the hardest things for me during these jams. Oh, wow, right at 7 too. Okay, so what next? I guess I need to work on either the interaction system, or the store, I should say, and the placement system, or the ability to pick up and collect score. I think score is probably going to be the easiest one, so let's figure that out. Actually, we'll say scoring component. And I'm going to mark these off my to-do. Yep, okay. Now let me do a quick code check-in here, just to make sure I don't lose anything. And we'll do add player movement. And push that. Highly recommend, if you're doing a jam, commit after everything you get working, because all it takes is one crash to lose all your progress. Okay. So we're good there. Now, score. This comes into the question, do I want picking fruit to be something that you have to interact with? Or do I want it to be you just grab it? I kind of like the idea that you have to physically reach the fruit. And I can make it so that the fruit has a generous bounding box. I don't necessarily love the idea of using the picking option to where you have to pick it. I think there could be some fun gameplay stuff there where like you run and jump and just grab the fruit as you're going by. But that doesn't necessarily, I guess just having a larger bounding box doesn't stop that either. Part of the reason I don't want to do that is interaction systems are always a little bit fiddly because you have to add stuff to the HUD to detect, you know, or to update whenever something's in range. And there's the whole thing of like, are you going to highlight the item? Are you going to change the HUD? Which is all doable. I've done that with Project Upsilon, but that's a lot of extra stuff. So I think for now, I'm just going to make a component for a pickup area and a component for a score item, I guess. And I guess the next question is, do I want to do a game event or do I want to I guess I'm going to do a game event. Okay, so that should probably be the first thing. So under globals, we're going to create a new folder for game event. And we will come in here, create a new script. Game events. And we're going to say, usually the way I do this is just signals. So we'll do score or scored. And we're just going to do integer scores. This can turn into spaghetti code, so you got to be able to be kind of careful with your game events, especially when you start dealing with different state changes in your code, but this should be fine for now. So now I'm going to need a component. So we have my jump component. We're going to create a new one. We're going to call this a score or scoreable. Scoreable. Yeah, whatever. We'll just. We'll say score pickup component. There we go. And this is going to be an area 3D. Yeah. And the reason I do these as area 3Ds is so that you can add your own collider under them. Okay, so now this should be relatively straightforward. Let's see. So I need an amount. So how much this is going to be worth. So we will do an export. And we'll just set it to 1 for now. I think I'm probably going to do these in like increments of 100 or something, but we'll figure out the economy later. And I think that's it. That's really all I need there. So one thing that has bitten me using hitboxes, hurt boxes, things like that, is not having the layers set correctly at runtime. So one thing I'm going to do on enter tree, I'm going to come in here and I am going to say collision layer equals and collision mask equals and also monitorable and monitoring. This is one reason why I don't like using area 3Ds as what you inherit from, is because it makes it easy when you add this thing to accidentally change one of those fields on an object and to screw everything up. So monitorable, I think, is going to be false. Monitoring is going to be true. So I'm going to do this to where the score pickup itself adds to the score rather than the, well, yeah, I think I prefer it this way. We're gonna do it that way. There's always the question of whether or not it's the thing being picked up or the thing doing the picking up that actually carries out the action that's happened. It's more flexible, I feel, to have the thing doing the picking up to handle the action, because you may want different entities that can pick something up to take a different action or to override the action. But in this case, I think it'll be easier to do it this way. Now, the one trick here is I need to set the layer. So I'm going to come over here. So score, which I'm calling item, is bit2 value 4. So we're going to set the layer on this to 4. And we're going to set the mask to 4. We're not going to check for a collision with the player. We're actually, well, ooh, that's a good point, actually. Maybe I should, maybe I should check for a collision with the player, now that I think about it. or I could set this thing to mask 0 and have the player check for it. Yeah, okay, never mind. I'm changing my mind. We're gonna flip this. Okay, so the mask is 0, so it's not going to check for anything. There we go. Okay. So it can be monitored and it's on the item layer, but it cannot be, it will not monitor anything else. So then this is all it needs. That's literally it. So now I'm going to create a new one. Actually, I'm going to rename this to just scoring. Okay, so now we're going to make a new component in here, and I'm just going to duplicate this one. So we're going to do score area component. I have to admit, I do like the idea of like needing to carry the fruit down and having them as like physics simulated objects, to where like maybe you bump the fruit and it falls off the tree and then you have to pick it up and carry it. But I feel like in the grand scheme of things, that would be tedious. It's just there's a side of me that loves playing with physics engines, and I'm trying to avoid letting that drift into this particular game, because I don't think that's going to be the right call. Now this is going to be flipped backwards. So this is going to take that monitoring is true, and it's going to be on 0. And then on ready, I guess I could have put this in ready as well, but we're going to do area entered dot connect on area entered and we're gonna call a method pickup. Okay, and actually what we're gonna do is call game events. Oh, I forgot to register it as an auto load. Emit, and we're going to pass in the pickup component. Actually, well, yeah. Why can I not click that? What is going on? Oh, is I... No, wait, what? Why is that redded out? Hides a global... What? What did I do? Hides a global script class. How? There is no way there is a global... Okay, there we go. I was gonna say that there's no way that Godot has a built-in class called score pickup component, or that I've registered it somewhere. It gets a little buggy sometimes. Okay, there we go. So now that should be fine. Well, okay, you know what? I'm rethinking this again. So the problem here is that whenever you pick this thing up, you need to indicate that it's been picked up. It's easiest whenever it touches something for that to be triggered. Yeah. And so usually the way I would do this is I would have a health component, a fragile box component, and then a score component, and then a death component. And the way this would work is whenever the player touches a fragile box component, the fragile box component just detects when something collides with it, and it triggers death on the health component. So it'll call health component.kill. And then the health component, when it dies, it emits a signal, which the score component and the death component listen to. The score component will just increment the score whenever it detects a health component has died, if you attach one. And the death component, if it detects a health component has been killed, will play some sort of death animation and then delete its parent, or delete whatever the scene root is. I think that's the way I'm gonna keep this. So actually the score component is probably gonna go away, in which case I need a few other components. So we're gonna do another one called health. So we will just quickly write these up. Health component is another one I've written about 100 times, but we're just gonna do it again. Okay, so we're gonna do signal killed. Normally I have that emit by how much damage, but in this case I think literally I'm only going to ever have this record just death or not death. So okay, so we'll do func kill. Yeah, I don't even think I'm gonna have a hurt method on here like I normally would. Actually, I'm gonna do that in ready. We're gonna do initial health. Health equals initial health. All right. I'll actually just make the hurt method private is what I'll do. Okay, so we will do health equals or minus equals absolute value of amount, just so that you can't accidentally add anything. And then if, actually, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to do, because I want to avoid negative health, so we'll do clamp I health, and we will do minus amount. Then the min is 0 and the max is health. There, that's better. That covers it a little bit better, so it can never drop below 0 and it can't go above what it currently is, so you can't heal it. So if health is less than or equal to 0, we will keep the less than in there just in case. We will do kill.emit. And we will do our original. Oh yeah, you know what, I'm gonna keep it like that for now. I normally have a hurt method as well, but I think this is fine. Why is that unexpected? Oh yeah, forgot the var. Okay, health component is, oh wait, that should call, this needs to call hurt. Actually, I guess I'm just gonna make hurt public. I may as well. And we're just gonna call it with health. That way it removes all the health. There we go. Easy health component. Okay, so now next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the score pickup component, and we're just going to make this a score component. And we'll update the file name as well. Okay, and we're going to actually export a health component. And here's how we're going to do this. If health component does not equal null, on killed, we will do a score. So we'll have a method for that. Okay, so we'll do game events dot score dot emit, and we will do amount. I don't like that amount is highlighted. I think that means that that's a built-in variable name. Hopefully not. We'll find out. Actually, easy way to check. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, so then I actually just need this to be a node then. It doesn't need to be any kind of collision node. All right, that's pretty easy. Now, I have also written this before where the death component takes a configurable death action as like a resource, and you could have a score as the death action, which I think is a little more, might be a little more flexible, but I think this is fine too. Okay, so that is good. I don't really see a reason to mess with that. The benefit of doing it that way is you can make it a little more data driven and a little less, because the problem you can run into is that you may say, okay, I want to have 10 different fruits, but if all of them are basically identical except for a mesh and the score, then making separate game objects or separate scenes for each one is going to get really tedious, because you're just going to be copying pasting the thing, and then you run into the whole problem of internally Godot is referencing the same resource between them, and you have to make sure you click duplicate on the resource, and it can be tedious. If you can make your stuff data driven to where if you know that the scoreable object is only ever going to change by its mesh and its score, you can make it so that you have one base object and then you have the data drive that. Now that can be inflexible, but it can also save you time, so you have to be careful. There are also ways you can do it data driven to where it is a little more flexible, but it's not as tedious as creating the scene tree over and over. And that's where you start to get into like using custom resources for things, but I'm not going to get into that. I don't think for this. I'm probably just going to copy paste it because I don't even know how many different fruits I'm going to have. And I may want, especially with the golden fruit, different actions for them. Okay, so now we have the health component in that. I do not have the death component yet, so I need to add that in, and I need so in my games, I usually have a hit box, a hurt box, and a fragile box. So a hit box is the area that actually takes damage. A hurt box deals damage, and a fragile box is an entity which takes damage if it touches anything. So for example, a bullet will often have a hit box, or sorry, it'll often have a hurt box and a fragile box. So if it runs into a wall, it gets destroyed by the fragile box, but if it runs into a person, it does damage. And then I'll also usually have my hurt box take a reference to the health component. And that way, the way I do it is if the component is defined, it will trigger some additional action. So in that case, if the health component is defined on a hurt box, then the hurt box will kill the health component whenever it deals damage, which is really useful for things like bullets. But I'm going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get back into writing up the death component and either a hitbox or a fragile component. I'm not sure at the moment which one I want to use for this, but I will be right back. All right, we are back. Okay, so I think the fragile box doesn't make the most sense here. Using a fragile box is kind of weird. Because the fragile box, usually in my games, the fragile box will break if it touches anything. And I think that might actually cause some problems with the fruits touching the tree and exploding. So I'm gonna probably just give the player a hurt box and a hit box to the fruit. So we're gonna go that route. All right. So we're gonna come in here. And we're gonna make a new one. And I'm gonna just call it damage, probably. Normally I make a separate folder for each component, but I've kind of drifted away from doing that because it felt a bit redundant. Oh wait, I need to make a script. And we're gonna call this a, let's see, which one do I need to make first? Is the hit box or the hurt box? Well, both of them are areas, so we'll start with that. I think it's that the hitbox detects collisions and calls the hurt method. You know what, let me look at some of my old code and just double check. I think that's how I made this work. Let me see. So hitboxes. Yeah. Hitboxes do not detect anything. So let's start with that. Hitbox component. Even though I could swap it for this jam, I like to be consistent between projects just to keep my head on straight. Although apparently I've been out of this for so long that I forgot. All right, so just like before, we're going to do an enter tree thing, and we're going to say monitoring is false. Monitorable equals true. Now hitboxes and hurtboxes are kind of weird because which layer they're on is something you should be able to configure. But I like to leave the ability to set the collider as a child. So I think what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to export flags, and we're going to use the 3D physics flags. And I believe this has to be used with an int. Yeah. Widget. Yeah, okay. So we'll say var layer int equals 0. Actually, I'm going to default it to 4. Okay. So then we're going to say collision layer and collision mask. The mask is going to be 0 because it's not monitoring anything. Or wait, I have this backwards. Oh wait, no, it's fine. All right. And then we have a hit method. And normally I have a damage object that will return who the source of the damage was, what type of damage it was. I don't think there's any good reason for me to do that in this project. I think I'm just going to use an int here. It's been beneficial before if you have multiple things that can deal damage because you can detect whether or not it was player damage or enemy damage. But since there's not really anything, I'm basically just using damage as a stand-in for controlling the state of objects, so it's not really that important here. So and the way this works is you attach the health component, and if health component does not equal null, actually I'm just gonna call it there we go. Now it's usually the health component itself is what I code as having a cooldown. But again, I'm not going to worry about that here. This is probably just going to deal 1 damage in the only case where it matters. Now this hit method is going to get called by the hurt box. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new component, and I'll probably just duplicate this one for convenience. And we're going to rename this to a hurt box. There we go. And we will not use a layer. Well, I'm actually thinking I might just hard code the layer for both of these. Yeah, okay. Well, this will be fine. Anyways, same as before, we're just going to swap these and then swap these. Okay, so monitorable is false, collision layer is 0, collision mask is that. Okay, so now in the enter tree, or ready, we're going to say area entered dot connect on the area entered and we're going to take an area 3D, and all we're going to do in here is say if area is hitbox component, we're going to call an internal method called hurt and pass the area in. And that is going to take a hitbox. And we're just going to do hitbox dot hurt or hit. And we're going to pass in the amount here. So all right. And again, the only reason I do this is it's just a to prevent errors where I accidentally manually set a field on the area somewhere and screw up everything. So now on the player, I can add a child node for a hurt box. And we can assign, well, I guess I don't need a, wait, why do I even have the health component on the hurt box? I don't need that here. Damage is 1 and it's on item is the layer, so that's good. All right, and then I'm gonna add a child node for a collision shape 3D, and we're probably gonna make this a I'll probably do a capsule. And we'll do 0.5, probably height 2. So we'll make that a 1. Actually, hold on. Now I don't think I want to do height 1 because I want it to be centered around this. Well, yeah, actually, you know what? I think this is fine. I don't think that's going to be a problem. Okay. So now I have my hurt box attached. That should be good. I'm not going to worry about that. So I'm going to go ahead and make the scene for the fruit. And we're just going to call this fruit for now. And we will do a hitbox component, and we'll add a child node for the collision shape. And we'll just do a sphere for that. Then I'm going to add a health component, health 1. Then we'll add a score component. And we'll link the health component. And then on the hitbox, we'll link the health component. Yep. And then we'll add a mesh instance. And we'll just do a sphere for now. Yeah, see, weird. I don't know why that happens in Godot. Why you sometimes get these resource load cyclic errors on new scenes. I would understand it if it were something like I've had brand new projects where when you create a resource, you instantly get that error. I'm really curious what causes that. If that's something I'm doing or if that's just a bug in the engine. I'm going to do 0.2. Make this a circle. I don't know why, but in my head, I keep seeing these things as Wumpa fruit. Like this mango looking fruit. I'll have to see if that's something I can make or if I have an asset for that. But so far, this should now be functional, which is the cool thing about using components like this, is the fruit is now fully functional. I don't have the death component yet, so it won't disappear, but it is there. I'm going to put this in a props folder, and we're going to make a fruit. Now, I'm probably going to have different kinds of fruit that take some sort of resource to set what type they are. And I might even make that a tool script so I can see what type they are in the editor. But for now, fruit is just going to be hard-coded like this. Okay, now before I can do much else, I need to add the death component. So I'm going to make a new folder for death and create new script, death component. And this is usually just a basic node the way I code it. And I usually will take a reference to the parent. Well, yeah, scene root. We'll just call that node equals null. And then I also need okay. And we'll do if health component. On killed. Okay. What the heck? All right, so then I have my die method. And all I do is I go to scene root and I call .queueFree. And usually what I'll do is I'll have a packed scene as another export that can be spawned in. So it will just spawn that somewhere. That's a whole other topic on how you find somewhere to spawn it, but it will just spawn in some sort of effect that will play whenever this gets queued for freeing. And there's better ways you can do this as well, but this is just the simplest way I like to do, and it makes it easy for stuff like this. Because you don't necessarily always want something to get freed whenever it's dead. But in this case, it makes it very easy to set up. And I can just set the scene root as the fruit. Yep. And that should about do that for the fruit. One thing I am going to do though real quick is I'm going to change the material on this thing. We're going to just do an inline one, and we're going to make it orange. Again, really playing into that Wumpa fruit thing. Actually, can I do a gradient texture? So we're gonna do there, and then here we're gonna do some sort of green. Huh. Yep. Okay, that should be fine. How did that? Okay, that's not exactly what I wanted. Is there a way to customize how the UV is calculated on this thing? Sphere mesh. I thought there was a way. Rings 32 spatial segments. Oh, okay, one thing for sure. I'm gonna reduce that down. Probably like 5. Yeah, it looks a little bit better. Had UV2. I thought there was an option on these to change how the UV mapping worked. Let me see if I do me. Also, can I just make this white? Oh, actually, that kind of messes with it if you do that. Shading mode. Oh yeah, I guess that is one thing I want to change really quick. Is I want to use. I want to force the lighting to be vertex lighting. Okay, so force vertex lighting. And then the other thing I want to do is filtering. The default texture filtering. I think I want it to be nearest. Actually, you know what? I think linear is what I want, come to think of it. Or no, it's linear mipmap. That's right. Linear mipmap, if I recall, is the one that looks closest to bilinear filtering. Use nearest mipmap. If true, use the nearest. Oh, okay, yeah, nearest mipmap. Default filtering. Yeah, okay. Let me restart Godot real quick. Whoa, something is not happy with me. What was that? What is it mad about? Parser could not. Oh, right, yeah. So this doesn't, yeah. Score area component shouldn't exist anymore. Yeah. Why is this? Would you? I don't know why Godot is behaving weird now. Doesn't want to fill the screen, but okay, whatever. All right, so that should be good. Let me take a look at this. Oh, that is really off now. Okay, whatever. Good enough. I give up. Well, from certain angles, that looks good. I'll have to do something about that. Actually, you know what? There might be a way to fix that. Let me see. If I use UV2 mapping, does that fix it? Or triplanar? Oh. No, it really doesn't. It turned into a beach ball. It's not what I was expecting. Let me mess with the scale a bit. That might be what's going on. Ooh, actually that... Oh, that fixed it. There we go. I am the master of avoiding Blender at all costs. There's my discount Wumpa fruit. This is actually almost every jam I've done. All of the assets are just made using CSGs and meshes in Godot. The only thing I think I've modeled for, or actually opened Blender for, is in Spectarier. I modeled the bell because I couldn't think of a good way to do that using CSGs. Or no, I also modeled the terrain in Blender, but not the buildings. Okay, so let me go into level and let me instantiate a child scene. Ooh, this is really dark in here. Okay, so let me see. Is it actually that dark in game? Oh. Oh, that looks really cool. See, it looks intentional. As crappy as that looks in editor, it looks intentional when you put it in such low resolution. Okay, let me see. Yep, okay, it disappeared when I picked it up. That's a good sign. All right. That is a very good sign. This is why I love doing low resolution game development like this. It makes it so much easier to avoid doing art. Okay. One thing I am noticing, right off the bat, is it's extremely dark, and I think that's because of the clear color on the ambient light. So real quick, let me pop open Eagle, and let me find my skyboxes that I have. Is it Puck? No. Or Open Game Art, that's probably what it is. I think it's Screaming Brain. Yep, Seamless Skies. We're gonna go for the smaller ones. I think Clouds. I kind of like this one actually. So we will bring that over into textures. Oh, one thing I do need to do before I forget is I need to make a list of credits down here. So already I need Kenny. As I add things, I like to do this. So this would be the Kenny prototype. I'll look up the right names for the stuff later, but I like to keep a running tally. And then this would be Screaming Brain Studios. What is the Seamless Sky backgrounds? Yep. Okay. And then if I end up removing this stuff later, then I'll take those out. Okay, so let me quickly make a new material. And we're going to create a resource, a sky. So we'll call this sky material. I think I'm going to do the thing where the clouds are actually like overhead, like a plane that just hovers over. That tends to be a very a good look, I think. Let's see, what do I want to do? Procedural sky. I think it's panorama sky is what I want to use. And we'll just load that. And the filtering is on. Okay. And then let's come over here into the level in 3D and let me actually set this. So I want the background to be sky. And we'll load that. Yeah, and you can see that brightened everything up immediately. The only problem is that you end up with that at the top of the screen. Ideally, you want to keep the top of the texture the same color so that that doesn't happen. I'm not too worried about that though, because if I do put a cloud layer over the level, that should avoid that as a problem. But let me see if that fixed the lighting. Oh yeah, that's much better now. And now the nice thing is the orange really stands out against the sky background, and it should. The green's a little iffy. Yeah, okay, so there we go. All right, that's looking good. All right, so now I need to actually build the HUD, I think, is my next option. Well, I really should work on more of the gameplay. So let's see. I need a scoring system that tracks the overall score the player has So I guess the HUD would be helpful for debugging. And then that score is going to be just money, basically. And that will be what you use to buy items or buy chairs to stack up to this thing. At some point, I'm also going to have to figure out what on earth I am going to name this monstrosity of a game. But we'll get to that when we get to it. Yeah, the store is going to be an interesting one as well. I'm going to have to figure out how that's going to work. But I think that should be fine. You know what? Actually, let me throw a couple things out here too while I'm here. I want to add a CSG. We're going to load up that test grid material. Which, by the way, you can see this is why I use world UVs. So you can see as I move the CSG, it doesn't affect the grid. The grid stays where it's supposed to be, which is why I like doing that. So I'm going to move that over to here. I don't actually know how high the player can jump right now, so that would be useful to know. Oh, also before I forget, use collision should be on for both of these. And we'll put this at 0.5, I guess. Wait, nope, wrong thing. 0. There we go. Whoa, the jumping's really weird all of a sudden. Oh, that's... Okay, there's something buggy with the jumping. I can only jump every once in a while. Yeah, if I spam it, I can jump. But yeah, okay, there's something wrong with the jumping. So, like, I can't jump at all right now, even though I'm standing on this thing. But I can jump when I'm standing there. What the heck? Okay, something is very wrong with the jumping. Yeah, like I'm pressing it right now and I can't jump. But now I can jump. It's like every now and then I just randomly... Okay, yeah, there, I pressed it like 4 times and I didn't jump. That's really strange. That was not doing that before I changed the skybox. So that makes me think that this is some sort of tick issue, where I've got something that's frame rate dependent in here on the input. Either way, it looks like I cannot jump up that high, but I can jump up this high, so that's good to know. Ooh, I can tell I'm still in floating mode right now. It thinks I haven't landed. What the heck? That is really unusual. So the moment I get off 0, 0, suddenly that's not working anymore. That's really odd. It also looks like I can't jump if I'm touching something. Oh, no, I can. Yeah, okay, I'm in floating mode. That is really strange. Huh. I don't think I've had this many issues with jumping before. I must have screwed something up when I converted that. Alright. Well, I'm going to add that here to the README on bugs that need to be fixed. Add that to the top. Jumping doesn't always work. Can't jump on platform. Still falling. I'm guessing what's going on is that I'm in the wrong state, or it's, for some reason, what's probably happening is that it's not it's not changing states like it's supposed to. Well, I know that, but I think it's not detecting whatever trigger is supposed to make it change states. is probably what's happened here. Okay, well, actually, did I have a bug fixing thing in here anywhere? Balancing, level design, models, bookends, mechanics. No, apparently not. Oh, also I can mark item pickup off the list. Oh, I can also mark the setting system off the list too. Yep. Okay. Which actually, come to think of it, I'm going to go ahead and mark the scoring is done. So that only took about an hour. That's longer than it normally takes me to do that, but so I said the next thing I want to do is the store. So we'll save that, and let me quickly check in this code, even though it's a little bit bugged. Yeah, I'm just gonna check all of that in. I don't usually do the best commits during jams. It tends to just be get it out the door. And we'll fix it later. And I'm also going to add also refactors movement code. There we go. All right. Well, I'm not going to worry too much about that right now on whatever's happening. First thing I'm going to do is add the HUD. And that way it'll make it a little bit easier for me to debug some stuff and figure out maybe what's going on. So usually what I've done lately is I like to make the HUD a child. Well, okay. The HUD, usually I split into two parts. One is a input object, which the player will usually own and can set data on. And then the player HUD itself will take a reference to that input object and update its view, or update whatever animations or whatever internally based on that. And then usually it will also listen to game events and do whatever it needs to do based off that. So scoring, there isn't a high level scoring system right now. I don't have like a score tracker or anything globally, which admittedly is not great. I should have something for that, so maybe I need to do that first before I do the HUD. You know, I'm gonna do the HUD first just so I can do some debugging stuff. So now the HUD is usually a scene, so I'm gonna do that. It's not usually very easy to do it as a component, so we'll just do a new folder for UI, and in here we will do a new folder for heads up display, and we're gonna make a new scene, and we're just gonna make it a canvas layer, and we're gonna call this okay. And we'll do that in 2D. We'll add a margin container and we'll set that to full rect. And there you can see just how small this thing is. Now I'm gonna probably do like, I don't know, 32. Oh, that's maybe a bit much. There we go. And I'll figure out themes later. So for now, I'm just gonna add a label or score. And why is this vertical alignment left top? Why are you in the middle of this container? Let me do a... Yeah, there we go. Put it up there, and we'll call that score label. And we'll access is unique. And I'm going to go ahead and preemptively add time in here as well. And we're going to push that out. Why are my controls missing? Oh, let me do an HBox container here actually. Put both of these on it, and yeah, okay, there we go. The HBox will fill, and then we'll shrink begin. And score is over there. Time, we are going to push to the end. So we'll shrink end on that and expand it. And this will also be expand, but we're going to shrink begin. Wait, what? Why is that not expanding? Horizontal fill. Oh, what? How did that happen? There we go. I was gonna say, what's going on? I'm probably not gonna actually make that say time. In fact, actually for score, I'm probably just gonna make this $1. And then for time, we'll just do something like that. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and into Eagle, and I am going to grab a crosshair. Not that I don't think it's strictly necessary to have one, but I think it's useful. Let's see, where's the crosshair pack? Ah, there it is. So we'll do a PNG. We'll just do a basic white one. And we'll find one that looks okay. I think this is usually what I end up using, is just the little circle. Yeah. Probably what I'm going to stick with. I either use the circle or the dot, but I find that the dot is a little distracting, so we'll just use the circle for now. So we'll dump that into the textures. So I like to quote or to credit every individual pack I use. So I'm going to add 2 for Kenny there. And all right, so then we'll come in here back into the HUD. And I'm going to add a texture rect. And we will do the crosshair. Whoa. What's the right thing? Oh, keep aspect centered, I think. Or is it keep? Okay, it's keep. Keep centered. There we go. Say it took me a minute to remember what the right thing is. Actually, I'm going to put that outside the margin container, because the problem with keeping that in the margin container is if you have non-uniform margins, your crosshair may not actually be centered anymore, which isn't great. Now I'm going to add this as a child. So we will, or sorry, instantiate child scene. We will do the heads up display. All right, and let me hide Eagle there. Okay, well, I can tell you right off the fact that crosshair is way too big. That is comically oversized for this. Okay. And I think the margins are too big as well. So we will come back over to here. We'll just edit this down a bit. Do like 8, 8, 8. I'm not going to worry too much about that. This is interesting because that I need to resize this. So we will hop on over to a sprite, and I'm going to open that. And we're going to go into the, where is it? Mini Jam, resources, textures, crosshair. Okay. Oh, that is already really small. Okay, well, let's try sizing it. Let's do bilinear on that. All right, did that make it any better? Or did that make it worse? Oh, actually, I think that might be good. That's better. I think I need to make it semi-transparent though. Or more transparent. So I'm going to use the modulate here. I don't like using modulate a lot because it causes shaders to not pre-compile great. But for something like this, it shouldn't be a major issue. Ah, yeah, okay, that's a little bit better. Actually, is there a shader option? Or is there a blend mode? Let's see. So we have materials, we have texture filtering. I don't think this has blend mode. Some of these do, but I think that's only the canvas items. And I'm not going to write like an invert shader or something for this. That should be good enough for now. So generally, what I'll usually do, or at least what I've done recently, is I will make a separate object that is a node that is basically just a bunch of properties, and the heads-up display will query them, and so will the player. I don't think that's necessary for this though. I think well, the reason I like doing that is so that you don't have to make the heads-up display a named script. So actually, I think I am going to do that. I spoke out of line. Okay, so I'm going to make this its own thing, but I'm not going to name it. And what I'm going to do, though, is in the heads-up display, I am going to create a new class and call it like heads-up display data. Extends node. And we'll say, I don't know, like score int equals 0. I don't know about time, but at least score. And actually, I'm going to say this, just call it player data, actually. Although, come to think of it, well, no, okay, I still need this. No, this may or may not be necessary. We'll circle back to that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is actually take a reference to this thing, and we'll call it player data. And then we'll put this in process. I could detect changes to this and update it automatically using signals, but I think for now we're just going to do this quick and dirty. So if their data does not equal null, and we're going to grab a reference to both of these. Actually, probably not the time label just yet, but the score label, and we're going to do score label.text equals str. And we're also going to do that. %d. There we go. Okay. So now I'm curious, if I come in here and I add a child, can I do No, you cannot add it as a child when it's like that. I was wondering about that. Okay. So this needs to be its own class then. That's fine. I will just do that. I will add a new component. You know what? This one I actually am going to put in here. Because it is so specific. And this may actually go away because I think I'm just going to query other systems to get this data. I don't know that it's really necessary to be here specifically. Okay. All right, so that's happy. So then I can come into here and I can add a child node. It's up display player data. And then I can attach that. Oh. Why is that not? What? Why can I not link that? Is it because this doesn't have a named class? Surely that's not the reason. They change. Did they really? Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's kind of annoying. I don't really want to do it like that. I don't love that way of. I really like to avoid doing that. Okay, never mind. I'm not going to do this with this thing. I'm just going to fetch the score from a different system and we're going to just do it that way. We're going to just comment that out and just put a pass here. Yeah, whatever. Okay, so the scoring. This is going to be an interesting one because the shop and the scoring theoretically is more tied to a game session. I've done that as an auto load in the past. But the problem with doing it as an auto load is that you get into a nasty situation where you have to reset state whenever the scene tree reloads, because auto loads do not reset if you reload current scene. So you end up doing a lot of state management that way. It's best to keep that as part of a game object if you can. So I think I am going to actually do a couple things here. I'm going to move the heads up display out of player. I am going to create a new game scene that contains the level and the heads up display. We're just going to do this as a basic node. And yeah, we're going to ditch the level out of main. And in game here, we're going to do level, instantiate child scene. And then we're going to add a child node, heads up display. Nope. Heads up display. Okay. And we're going to make a new folder for game. And then we will do that here. This is actually better for the preloader anyways to do it like this. Okay. So now all of the game state is going to live under here. So now I need some sort of score tracker. Which I guess the question becomes, is the score tracker also the store? It could be. I don't really think there's a strong reason not to have it be in this instance. Yeah, I think that's going to be what I do. So we're just going to go ahead and make a store. But I think the store... So here's what I have to think through. Let me come into the HUD and start prototyping around a little bit with this. So my thought is we're going to have another HBox container. But this one is going to be set to shrink end. And then within this, we're going to have like a, I don't know, panel container maybe, or and we'll set like, I don't know, minimum of 32 by 32. Yeah, something like that. So this is what I'm thinking is something like that. And set that to shrink center. Yep, there we go. So that's kind of what I'm thinking is something like this. Although these probably should be 16 by 16. Let me delete those. Never mind. 24 by 24 maybe. Yeah, that might work. Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm thinking is something like that. And my thought is that each one is going to be numbered. So would add like a label. I don't know, 1. Two, 3, 4. Wow, that looks horrible. Yeah, so the idea is that you have to press 1, 2, 3, or 4 to spawn in each thing. So let me just see. How does this even look? Okay, that looks fine. I mean, other than the numbers not being centered, but my thought is that you use the number keys to spawn in the items. Oop. So I don't need a way to really highlight an item because it's not like an inventory. Well, I guess it could be. Because my thought is that the mouse buttons are going to be used to toggle the rotation mode. So like right mouse button, if you hold it and drag, it will like change how the object is oriented. And then my thought is that like left mouse button will place it. And then like scroll wheel might be to move it in and out, potentially. I don't know if I want to move it in and out like that though, or if I want to have the scroll wheel actually cycle through the items. Because like, for me personally, I'm someone who doesn't use hotkeys a lot. So I think even for me, this might be a little awkward, and it is kind of weird in a platformer to be taking your fingers off WAS and D to go to the hotkeys. And I also do think you kind of need an outline of where the object is going to be before you place it. So, okay, I think the hotkeys and the scroll wheel are going to be used to just highlight which one of these is active. So one of these will need to be just activated. I don't know. We'll do like self-modulate. I don't know, something like that. Whichever one's active, and then the scroll wheel will swap it, and as it swaps, it will change which silhouette of the object is in front of you, or which ghosted object is in front of you, and then the right mouse button will just change its orientation. And then I might not have a way to move it in and out, or maybe scroll wheel plus, right? I don't know. Okay. So that's fine. Then the question becomes, so the HUD needs to be aware of which item is currently selected so that it can swap to it. Hmm. So, hmm. This just makes me think that the HUD is probably best attached, because like the player is going to have to signal that you want to switch between items. And I still kind of want that to be part of player input. I don't really want that to be a separate input script. So I'm thinking that this should be an object. The store itself should be an object that's tied to, or that's like a child component of the player for the store. And if that's the case, then the HUD is also probably going to need to be with the player again, which makes sense. Yeah, okay. I'm still gonna leave game the way it is. I think this is fine, but I'm also gonna have to think through how these panels are gonna work, because I need like a number in the corner, and then I need a cost at the bottom, and then a picture in the middle. So I'm probably gonna need a custom resource for chair store icons that is like cost, model, and picture or something like that. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna remove the HUD from here again, and we're gonna go back to the player, and we're gonna add the heads up display here. I still don't love that the heads up display has to have a name to reference. I didn't think you needed to do that. I didn't think you needed to give a class name to expose export variables. I don't remember that being how that works, to be perfectly honest. I wonder if that's something that's changed, or if I just was doing something different before and forgot. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and start to build out the store system. So at the moment, I think the store actually needs to be 3D, because it exists in 3D space where the player is. So I'm gonna actually do the store as a 3D scene, but I'm gonna do this as a component, or a store component. And we're going to create a new script, and we're just going to use node 3D for this. What the heck? I'm not really sure why it's a store component, but as opposed to just a store, but we'll roll with it. Actually, that's a good point. I'm just going to make it store instead of store component. And we're going to move it out of the components and put it over here, because it really is not a component. All right. And okay. So now I'm going to need a private variable for money. Int equals 0. And I think I'm going to do a signal for money changed. Or is there a better way to say that? No, yeah, money changed. Total Okay. So then in ready, we are going to subscribe to game events dot scored dot connect on scored. This is where the code's starting to turn a little bit into spaghetti here. Func, update total amount int. And we're gonna actually make this a Boolean. So we're gonna say our amount allowed change int equals let's see, do I want to do a wrap I, and this would be to make sure basically what this method is going to do is it's going to return false if you cannot subtract the amount of money you're trying to subtract from it, and it's going to return true if it applied the amount. So if the amount is positive, it's always going to apply it and return true, but if the amount is negative, it won't apply it to the total unless it wouldn't put it into the negatives. So I'm going to actually have this method double up as being the method I use to detect, or the function I use to detect if you can change. Okay. So let's see. Do I want... No, I think I want clamp. Okay, so the value would be amount. The min would be negative total. And I'm actually going to change that to total. Well, actually. Well, yeah. I'm going to say credits, actually. And I'm going to change this to credits changed. That makes more sense. So negative credits. Actually, I think I want this to be max between... Is that right? Or do I want min? Okay, so if amount is negative 100 and credits is 1, max would choose negative 1, which should be right. No, I'm massively overthinking this. If amount is greater than equal to 0, then credits plus equals amount, and we will emit the credits changed. Elif amount, the absolute value of amount is less than or equal to credits. So that way this condition will only be if it's negative. So if it's negative 100 and credits is only 1, then 100 is greater. Okay, so that will be fine. So then we will do credits plus equals amount. Credits changed. Actually, I guess this can just be or. Yeah, actually, I guess that's fine. You can just do that. Right? So if the credits is greater than or equal to 0, you can add it. And if the negative amount is less than or equal to the total of credits. Yeah, okay, that should be fine. Okay. So then all I need to do is on the player, we're going to add the store. And the plan is the store is going to spawn in the object at its current location. So that should be easy enough to handle. I'll just offset it in front of the player basically. So we will do, I don't know, 1.75. Or actually what I should have the store as a child of the, I don't know, I guess the camera pivot realistically. And we'll do, I don't know, negative 1.5. Maybe a little bit more, negative 2. There we go. Okay. So now the store's out there. And now on the heads-up display, I guess I could have done this without game events as well. But this is fine. So I guess I'm going to go ahead and just make heads-up display the one thing that is using a class name. And we'll say store. Okay. So then func ready if store does not equal null. Store.creditsChanged.connect on credits changed. Func. Okay. Now what did I call that on here? Total. All right. And I will just put that there. I'm also going to go ahead and change this from score label to credits label. Well, okay. I'm starting to second guess this again. So the part of the problem is whenever you score, it might be time for me to take a break and think about this. My issue is that I did say I wanted a scoring system in the game at the end. And the thought was that it would use the amount of money you have left. But the problem is, how do you figure out the amount of money if it's being stored in the store object attached to the player? I think that needs to be a game level object that tracks your score and your money, because those are basically the same thing. So if that's being tracked at the game level, then how does the player get a reference to it? I guess the player would get a reference by passing it in as an export, I suppose. And then the heads-up display could either be part of the player. Okay, yeah, that's probably what I need to do. But then, so the store I think is fine. The store can stay here, but the score component of the store that actually tracks like your bank, that needs to be a separate thing entirely. See, the funny thing is, I think this is how I think with maximum voltage, if I recall correctly, I believe that I had the component that tracked, yeah, if I remember, when I made maximum voltage, the pickups had a special pickup collector item, and they would increment something on the pickup collector, and then there was like a bank component on the player. I think that's how I got away with it that way. I don't think I necessarily want to go that route right now, but okay, yeah. So store is fine, but I need a bank is my issue. So this is realistically this is not the code for the store, it's the code for the bank. So we're gonna keep that blank, and then we're gonna come in here and we're gonna make a new bank script. And yeah, just node bank. Last name bank. Okay, so yeah, this literally only just stores that. Okay, so then we're gonna come in here to game, and we're gonna add a child node for bank. And that way it can fetch that. And then that also means that I need a func get credits. And we'll just return that. And I know I could use properties for this, but I'm just going to use getters. Okay, that way it can access that for scoring. Yeah, I guess level's a little bit problematic, but I'm trying to avoid making bank and auto load is my chief concern right now. But okay, so somehow I'll get that passed down into the store script. We'll do that. I could use game events to transfer like whenever the credit amount changes, but that gets a little hairy and I'd like to avoid that. The problem is now is that both player and level are going to have references to the bank, which I'm not in love with. I suppose level could have a reference to the bank. I don't know. I'm definitely feeling a little bit iffy on that one. Okay. I'm debating cutting the stream here and just thinking about this offline. Because none of the options I'm seeing right now really make sense to me. I want the scoring to be something that can be queried and updated as part of the game state, because that's part of the actual scoring for the end level. Because game, usually for me, this thing is meant to track all the game state. So whether the game is currently being played or whether or not it's game over or whatever. So like the game over screen usually for me would be under game. And I think that's where I'm getting a little bit confused here, because in past jams I've made scoring an auto load. It was usually I'd have some sort of score manager that would get reset whenever the game is reset. Or more precisely, I think it would get reset whenever you started a new game. Which might be the easier option here. But it does introduce a lot of really hacky problems that I don't like. So like game time, for example, is always a problem with that. So I am tempted to have that part of the game state here. But I'm really going to have to think about this one because the bank introduces a problem. I've never used it where something you pick up. Well, I've never done it very cleanly, and I'm worried I'm getting off track from actually finishing the game and spending too much time thinking about this, but I'm also worried that I'm going to create a real mess for myself later. So I think I'm going to go ahead and call it here, and I'm going to go maybe for a walk and think about this for a bit. I might do some development off camera and then come back, but we'll see. I'm not sure if I'm going to be back tonight or if I'm just going to roll right into sleep and then pick this up again tomorrow. So if not, I'll see you then. And thanks for tuning in. Have a good one.